All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and just get started for a few minutes. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of other people coming in, and we're hopefully waiting for a few more of the candidates to show up. My name is Tina Horlocker, and I am the chair of the Davis County Conservatives. And before I say another word, we're going to open with prayer and then the Pledge of Allegiance. Irene Hill will be giving the opening prayer.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time to learn about the candidates, and we thank you for all the safe travels. And please bless the people that are still coming, that you will give them safe travels also. God, just please help your work be done here during this time, and we will learn about the candidates. And please bless us as we leave this place with safe travels. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right, if everyone could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here this evening. We still have a lot of people coming in. Are we streaming yet? Oh, awesome. Okay. We want to thank Pastor Bickle for allowing us to meet here in the Faith Baptist Church. He is absolutely amazing, and we really appreciate his hospitality. We hold our meetings on the second and fourth Thursday of every month except for July and December, and we're all about educating. We talk about all different topics, but during this time frame, we're all about helping to get the word out about candidates and helping to get the most conservative candidates elected, because we are the Davis County Conservatives. Sorry, I forgot to silence my phone. So I wanted to just ask, how many of you are delegates? Okay. How many of you are new delegates? Awesome, I love that. I heard a gentleman right here tell me this is his first time being a delegate, and he was really enjoying it. Are you guys enjoying this experience? Okay, so I just want to emphasize how important it is to be a delegate. It is representation at the lowest level, and that's where we protect our freedoms, at the lowest level. It was delegates that we sent to the Constitutional Convention who ultimately brought us the Constitution of the United States. So this process is very, very important. And as many of you are aware, it is being diminished by a law, SB 54, where you can access the ballot by getting signatures. Now, there are many candidates that are getting signatures. You can ask that question. There's a lot of reason why candidates are gathering signatures, but we're not here to necessarily kick them in the pants. We are all about caucus and convention. That is what we support. And we actually support not signing signature packets, but we respect the right of a candidate to gather signatures because they can by law. We believe it's the law that needs to change. Okay, so I would like to also know who is a state delegate. Okay, so if you're a candidate that's going to be elected by a state delegate, you might want to look around. And how many of you are a county delegate? Okay, so it's kind of half and half. How many of you are precinct chairs? So you guys are on the County Central Committee, which means you will attend quarterly meetings that are important. Before we really get into this debate, we're going to have the candidates come forward here in just a couple of minutes. Does anybody have a question for me? Awesome, you guys. Okay, right here.
Will we have opportunity to ask questions?
So we have if you want to submit a question, you can write it on a piece of paper and hand it to me. And we have moderators this evening who will be asking questions. But you are more than welcome to hand me a question, and I will hand it to the moderator. Okay? Maybe someone has a piece of paper you can borrow. Okay. If you need a piece of paper to write down a question, raise your hand. Okay, this wonderful Karen will help me out here. She's helped me in the past. Okay, I am also just going to say one more time, Davis County Conservatives. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube. We do record our meetings. However, we prefer in-person attendance because we are trying to build community, and you're not going to build community by watching a podcast on YouTube at home. We want you guys to get to know each other. We want you to network together. We're trying to build community, so we want you to come and be in person. And we invite you to come back, even when you're done serving as a delegate. I mean, serving as a delegate is 2 years, and we're trying to let you know what's going on. So keep coming. Join our Facebook page, Davis County Conservatives, and we have a website, daviscountyconservatives.org. And if you're a member of my board, please stand up. I have an awesome board. Okay, and I think that's it. So I'm going to introduce Uriah Kennedy and Ingrid Bettridge, right? Did I see your last name right? They are both the moderators for tonight. They do God and Country podcast, and that just takes the heat off of me, and I'm all good about that. I can't think of anything else. Oh, let me say this. So Senate candidates come up, and you can take your seat. If we only have 4 candidates, so Tami and Jen and Braden. Where's Braden?
It's on the phone.
Okay, Braden's here somewhere. And Denny, where's Robert? I guess I should call him Robert. Your turn. So you guys can all go up there and take the seat that you would like. Do it in your districts. So Senate, let's do District 6 on this side, District 7 on this side. Question right here. So the Senate candidates will have 45 minutes. We're going to give you a 1 minute opening statement, all right? And then we're going to just ask questions for the remainder of the time. And then the House candidates will go up and they'll have their turn. So here you go, Uriah.
Well, I'm glad to see everybody out here. I was a county delegate and a state delegate for a number of years. Didn't make it this time, but it's all good. We are the God and Country podcast. There are slips that you can get in the back where you can reach us. So if you didn't get one, on that music thing back there, you guys can get the slip to QR code right to our YouTube channel. We interview lots of politicians around the state. We also interview lots of people around the country, and oftentimes we're interviewing people around the world. So, large podcast. Hope you'll subscribe and follow us. We're going to start this debate off with a 1 minute introduction, and we'll just go from left to right. She's going to mic somebody up there. Get your mics. You should be sitting next to your mics on your chair. Just make sure they're on. So let's do a sound check real quick.
Hello.
Testing.
Hers is on. Yours on?
Yes.
Yours on?
Hello.
Yep. Okay, we're good on sound. So we're going to go ahead and get started from left to right. Go ahead and do 1 minute. Tina is timing, so watch her, and she'll give you the beat when you should be ending.
Perfect. My name is Jennifer Garner, and I am running for Senate District 7. I've been concerned about our taxes. I don't think that it has been transparent on how they've been issued. The biggest tax cut in history that was supposed to be 2 years ago was actually just sending taxes to be recollected by other entities. So I think that needs to be made apparent. Also, housing is a major issue for me. I can see all of the pieces that have come together that have made us the 3rd highest housing market in the nation, and we're supposed to be Utah. So it's so there's some pieces that have come together, and it's all backed up by legislation that has centralized the ability for big players to become bigger players. I think the biggest part about that is our homes are the main way that we transfer wealth to our children. And Big corporations are seeing that that's where the wealth transfer is, and so they're taking over that, and it's going to affect our homes. I'm also concerned about some legislation that was passed for family members. Thank you.
So I'm Stephanie Hollist, and I'm really glad to be here today. I am running because I am a longtime resident of Davis County. I'm raising 4 children here along with my husband, who is also a lifelong resident of Davis County. And I want to make sure that our legislator is serving our interests. That is really the main reason why I am running. I agree with all of the issues about taxation and housing, and I have thoughts and plans and solutions for those issues as well, and I think we'll kind of get into that a little bit as we go on forward. But I'm also an attorney. I spent 18 years in public higher education, and I see how policy works, and I see how the legislature works. I know how to bring people together and listen to them and listen to their goals and create policy that actually works, that solves problems, not just kicks them down the road. When our government is operating through power or pressure or manipulation, we don't get the good results that our community deserves. I'm here tonight to earn your trust, and I will keep earning that trust every day of the legislature. Thank you. District 7.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tami Tran. I am running for Senate District 6, which is Jerry Stevenson's district. He's retiring. I'm the current mayor in Kaysville. I was born in Seoul, Korea, and adopted when I was 15 months old to the United States. I became a naturalized U.S. citizen when I was 8 years old, and I am so proud to be here and proud to be able to represent my community. I believe in limited government. I believe in doing everything we can to protect our freedoms. I've had 3 opportunities so far to take the oath of office to uphold and protect the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the state of Utah. And I take that responsibility very seriously. I've been in public service. I started serving on the city as a planning commissioner and then was elected to city council for Kaysville, and now I'm on my 2nd term as the mayor. I am running because I believe in local control, and I want to make sure that we can do everything possible at the state level to protect our cities and our communities and listen to our residents. And I am done. Here you go.
I got my own.
Yeah.
I'm Robert Wanlass. If you've known me before, you'll know me as Denny. I used to own Red Dot Firearms in Layton, which I started in 2012 and ran for 10.5 years. I'm running for office because I care about my community, I care about freedom, I care about the proper role of government. I'm a believer that the scariest phrase in the world is I'm from the government and I'm here to help. There's so many things in this state that we can fix, and a lot of it probably has to do with, or probably was caused from government intervention in the first place. And the worst thing you can do is have government try to fix its own problems, but at least we can try and undo what was done to cause those problems in the first place. And I'm happy to be here. I'm running for District 7, by the way, against Tami, which is Jerry Stevenson's seat. I'm sorry. District 6. He's District 7. I got mixed up. He's on the wrong side. So anyway, that's all I got.
I'm
Thanks.
on the left. I am on the wrong side.
We're going to have you if you move over.
Sure. Can I trade you, Tami?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Yes. Do I take my mic? Thank you, though.
Hello, everyone. My name is Braden Hess. I'm a candidate running for Senate District 7. I'm a firm believer in limited government, and I believe even now our state government has a lot of waste going on. I'm running because I want to leave our state and our country in a better place than we found it, and I think it's been a while since we've done that. I want a brighter future for my children and my grandchildren. In our state, my kids, if we continue on this trajectory, my kids will not be able to afford to live here. So one of my priorities is making housing affordable through restoring the free market, which I believe our current senators have not tackled that. I'm running to also vet judges more thoroughly. We've got the Prop 4 issue going on. We're going to have a Democrat in Congress in Salt Lake City, and I just don't think we should be, I think we need to be protecting our Republican majority in Congress, and we have not done that. But more importantly, we need to protect our Constitution. actually protect that at all costs. And our current Supreme Court has not done that. They've introduced their own political bias or judicial bias. So I'm running on the idea of freedom and limited government.
Excellent. So what we're going to try to do here is, so we can get through more questions, is ask one district at a time. So the other district's going to get a completely separate question, because there's a lot of questions we need to get through here. So we're going to go with this district first, and we'll start with you and go the other direction. First question is, if you're running nationally for the U.S. Congress, would you consider yourself a Mitt Romney candidate, Mike Lee, or Ron Paul candidate?
That is such a tough question. I'm definitely not a Mitt Romney. I am closer to a Mike Lee or even a Ron Paul mix. I'm a firm believer in the free market. In limited government, I think the government is playing too large of a role in our lives, and we need to get the government out of it. But I support a lot of what Mike Lee does. I think he's doing a fantastic job.
So I would be looking at each of those three and trying to create the perfect candidate, because I think each of them have their strengths and their weaknesses. As a woman of faith, I really admire that the ones who are also faith-focused and who are looking out for the interests of Utahns and for our interests, not necessarily the interests of others, because that's also what I'm focused on, is making sure that we are representing our community and serving our community. So when those legislators are doing those types of things, that's what I support.
So I think that each of them have made some mistakes. I have seen I think that being kind, which Mitt Romney has been very kind, but it's also gotten the Republican Party embarrassed, and I don't like that. I have a backbone, so I'm going to stand up for what I believe in. I like a lot of what Senator Lee has done, but I'm going to be my own candidate. I'm going to take the best of each of them and stand on my own merit. I would stand on my own merit and restore constitutional principles that have been taken from us.
All right, District 6. This is a loaded question. What is the main cause of inflation? Tami, why don't you take that one first?
I think that the main cause of inflation has been overprinting money. I think that the government tried to fix a problem that had accumulated over time, and they flooded the market with money, and it gave people a false sense of security, I think, and maybe even optimism. I think that they should have called our market recession several years ago when it actually started, and that's it.
Tami is absolutely right. The main cause of inflation is the unfettered printing of money. COVID did us no favors with that. There was trillions of dollars printed, and when you have massive amounts of dollars chasing the same number of goods, prices have nowhere to go but up, and it's just what we've been stuck with, and hopefully we can get that under control and end the Fed. Does that sound like a Ron Paul right there, right?
All right, we're going to stay with the two of you, then she's going to ask the three of you the question. So I've had this question like 5 times in here, and it's about property taxes. There's a big issue down in Salt Lake County where they're trying to raise property taxes, and that didn't go over so well. Everybody saw that social media feed. The biggest consumer of our property taxes is obviously our schools. There's also a lot of stuff out there nationally to try to get rid of property taxes. What is your feeling on increasing property taxes? We'll start with you.
I'm actually in favor of getting rid of property taxes altogether, because I don't think we should have to rent our property and our homes from the government. And when you have to pay property taxes, if you don't pay your property taxes, they're going to come take your house from you eventually. I don't think that's fair. That's not right. And I don't know how you make up the difference in revenue, but it's going to be some kind of consumption tax where you get to choose when you spend taxes, when you buy things. And what was the rest of the question? Oh.
Okay, as far as property tax goes, so I am serving at the local level, where property tax is one of the only sources of revenue a city has in order to pay for services. One of the reasons I'm running for state Senate is because the state likes to create legislation that creates unfunded mandates and puts the burden on cities and counties. And so they're able to maybe save money or at least not fully disclose where the money is going, and then cities and counties have to come up with the difference. And so I definitely would love to be Florida. I love how they're looking at, or maybe they've actually done it, eliminating property tax. I would love to see that in Utah.
Tina, are we going to be at 1 minute or 30 seconds now? Okay. Okay. A different question. Do you believe citizens have a right to bear arms? Why or why not? Jennifer.
So I have 3 boys, and when one of them was little, he chewed his toast into into a gun and shot me with it. So I freaked out, and then a few years later, I had someone run through my backyard that had just committed a robbery down the road, and this is out of nowhere. Sorry. So I went to training. I think we have a responsibility to be trained. And we have a responsibility to protect our neighbors. I went from not liking toast guns to having a collection that fell off the boat in the river. and I will not be the liability if something happens because I have the training. Thank you.
So I am a defender. I'm a defender of the Constitution, and that is the Second Amendment as well. I believe in making sure that, just like our founders intended, that we're enforcing all of those constitutional rights and freedoms. I also agree in good stewardship, and I agree that as responsible gun owners, we need to make sure that we are taking those trainings and we're protecting our guns and that we're keeping them in safe locations and that we're doing what we can to make sure that we are trustworthy to be able to make sure we can show that we are, that is a right that we are holding dear.
I am a fierce defender of the Second Amendment. I fully believe in people's right to bear arms. I don't believe in red flag laws. I don't think it's the government's job to ensure that people handle guns safely. I think we have the moral responsibility ourselves to do that, but I don't think it should be a government requirement to do all that. I believe in being able to carry guns, and I think the primary purpose of firearms is to defend yourself against a tyrannical government, but also against foreign invaders or on your own to defend yourself in your own home.
All right, we're going to start with the same group, but we're going to start in the middle, so you have the first to go, and then we'll go to Braden and back around to you. Okay, this is actually a great question, though, just handed to us from the audience. I like it. So part of the party platform is this: the only legislation that has been read and understood with the clear benefit to the citizenry over special interests may be eligible for a yes vote. But oftentimes that is not happening. So people are not reading the entire bill, and a lot of times special interests take over. How will you fight special interests, outside influences from outside of the state of Utah, and prevent or uphold this part of the party platform?
So I have taught government ethics for 10 years to every new employee, and I know government ethics, and I will bring that to the Capitol. I know conflicts of interest. I know how to vet, and I know how to be transparent because our decision-making needs to be focused solely on our community. We need legislators who are focused on our interest, not outside interest, not special interest, nothing else but what is the best interest and the interest of our taxpayers and our community. So what to do to prevent that? I think our legislation needs to be more transparent. If you look at how laws have gotten passed in the last session, you can see on the legislature's website how it went from this many during the session to this many during the last week. The last week, when during the last 3 days of the session, the rules are no longer there. You don't necessarily have to go to a committee. You don't have to have that transparency and the public input. That's not good government, and that's what I want to change. I want to change it by making it so that the legislation has to be available in advance.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry. Uriah?
Sure.
Thanks.
So let me read it again just so everybody can. So this is part of the party platform. The only legislation that has been read and understood with a clear benefit to the citizenry over special interests may be eligible for a yes vote. So the bill has to have clear, precise benefits for the citizenry and not for any type of special interest. So here in the state, we have a lot of outside influences from out of state, a lot of special interests try to influence stuff. How do you prevent that? And by knowing the full law, what you're saying yes to.
So I think it starts with our legislators actually reading the bills. That so many of them just vote how their friend in the legislature voted, and they just by default do that. I actually worked for the legislature. I drafted bills for them in the transportation area, and there were multiple instances where legislators told me, work with this lobbyist on creating the language, and the lobbyist would just send me the language, and I was the legislator expected me to just take that language and put it in the bill without even reading it themselves. I think that's absurd. We need to actually have our drafting attorneys drafting the bills dictated by what the legislator wants, not what a lobbyist wants, not what a foreign government or another entity wants, what the legislator wants. And then our legislators all need to read the bills. And by default, they should be voting no if they haven't read the bill.
So to wrap up, I think that the legislature suspending the rules for the last week that needs to stop. They can't do that, claim that they didn't have time to read the bill and then act like victims. That's got to stop. The attorneys that write the bills, I'm not an attorney. I don't have any special interests except for you. You're my special interests. So I will not be taking money from developers or attorneys that want legislation written in a certain way. I think something else that has been harmful is we've had attorneys write legislation that can be argued in two different ways, for and against. And I think that's wrong. I think there needs to be clearer explanations in the first part of the bill that said this is exactly what this bill does. Our average reading age in the state of Utah is 8th grade. First of all, we need better education to fix that. Second of all, we need legislation that people can understand.
Danny, will you start off by answering, do you believe in a woman's right to choose abortion?
No. I don't believe you can choose to, I guess you can choose to murder somebody. I mean, that's how I see it. You're killing an unborn baby at that point, and I don't see really any reason that needs to happen.
Tami?
I'm definitely pro-life. Last night we had the GOP debate, and I was talking about that. As a little girl, I remember seeing literature scattered around our kitchen table of horrible babies in different stages of abortion. And that absolutely impacted me and imprinted upon my memory some very opinionated feelings about the sanctity of life. And so I know that there are situations where a doctor will recommend an abortion. I think that those are very extreme and very isolated situations. I don't believe that you can just choose to murder and not have consequences. So no, I don't believe that women should be able to have the right to just abort their children because it's not convenient.
Okay, going along those same lines, there's a big push nowadays to get LGBTQ stuff into our schools and into the youth, and they're trying to do it younger and younger and younger. Both Oregon as well as Colorado have already passed laws that can literally claim that parents are bullies. It literally says it in the code. We've read it many times in our podcast. They can label a parent a bully, and the school can literally medicate and do sexual transitions for minors with not only without parental permission, but without parental knowledge. Those type of ideologies will seep into the state. How would you prevent it? Let's start with Tran.
As you were presenting that question, I could feel my heart start to race. I cannot believe that. I think that is appalling. Absolutely appalling. As far as being a legislator to prevent that, I would be very vocal against that. It is not part of our culture here. It is not part of our belief system. It is not part of our principles or values to be able to infiltrate schools with that type of curriculum. And so I absolutely oppose that. I believe that parental rights should exist, and I can't believe that anybody would be okay with taking those rights away from parents to be able to know what's going on with their own children and to be able to make those decisions without their consent and without their involvement. I also don't believe that that curriculum has a place in our school system. I would absolutely fight against that and don't agree with it. So don't support that at all.
Same for me. I see no reason that needs to be in our school system at all. We need to let kids be kids, teach them the basics, reading, writing, arithmetic. There was a recent study that came out that 50% of third graders couldn't even read at grade level. That's pretty horrendous. For me, parental rights isn't just it's a hill to die on. Like, let's be real. I mean, nobody raises their kids better than a parent, not the government, not a teacher, not a principal, nobody. And that's a hill I'll die on at the Capitol.
Let's continue with the same question, and we'll start with you, Braden, and just move left.
I am against DEI, period. I don't think we should be defending it fiercely the younger the children are. I'm a firm believer in the idea that the way you were born is the way you're going to be your entire life. And I mean, Fred Rogers said it best: when you're a boy, you'll always be a boy. When you're a girl, you'll always be a girl. That being said, there are people that have mental illnesses that believe this sort of garbage that our society is teaching them. I think we need to treat them as human beings, as our brothers and sisters, and help them, but definitely not play into their delusion in their mental illness. We need to work in reality.
Our conservative values tell us that parent choice is supreme, right? We are the best ones who know what is good for our children, and to create laws and things like that, especially at those young ages where the parent is not involved in those choices and that decision making, that's not right. And so really, to be able to prevent that, we need to make sure that our parents are involved, our parents are engaged, and we're giving that power to our parents.
I do not co-parent with the government. They're not the owners of my children. This started with smaller things like inappropriate books in our elementary schools, junior highs, and high schools. It started with conversations of, oh, you're sad, that must mean you're like, we have teachers that have said this, and it's not all teachers. We have good teachers, but we need to give them the support that they need to butt out, in my opinion, if that's the correct vernacular. But it's not just in our schools, it's in our county libraries, and it has been normalized. So it's not just talking about, hey, here's an event, and when you signed your paperwork to register your child for school, you opted in. Those need to be, or you didn't opt out, so you're automatically in. That needs to be switched. There needs to be more support for parents, more support for teachers to do the right thing, because we have teachers that want to stand up and do the right thing.
Last week, and people can see this, we ran a podcast where we had a full committee, and Trevor Lee was on it, Carrie Ann Leesenby were on, a few others. And one of the primary things we discussed was there's an extreme uplift in youth suicides. 14 to 18, it's gone way up. Utah is probably one of the highest ones in the country. And it all stemmed from the COVID shutdown. That started it, but it's continuing because of media. So we discussed heavily media in schools. I mean, parents have the right to do whatever they want in homes as far as their own personal media. but how far should schools go in giving children media where they have access to social media? There's a lot of schools that have given out personal tablets, and it has already been proven, people can see it on the podcast as well, is that you can bypass the firewalls in 13 seconds and be at pornography, or within 3 clicks and be at pornography in less than 13 seconds on a school-provided tablet. There was a study just done at the Granite School District where they eliminated cell phones and technology, and test scores went up by 50% and fights went down by 50%. What is your opinion on media, on tablets, on cell phones in public schools? We'll start with you.
So there's also studies that say that if you that it takes 3 months to catch up with technology, 3 months. So that can be when they're 18 or 16 or whatever age we feel that that's appropriate, but it should not be starting when they're in kindergarten. Technology has not taught our children better. Teachers teach our children better. Parents teach our children better, but it also comes with a necessity to set a good example. If we're on our phones scrolling anytime they're at home, that's not setting a good example. COVID absolutely normalized isolation, and we have a responsibility as adults to reconnect with our neighbors. I believe that suicide rates are going up also because of SSRIs. They're harmful. The medical industry has not been honest with this information, and we need to demand the data that shows that they're not working. It's not fair to have a mental illness and you get put into a system that's going to try out different cocktails until you feel good, and then it doesn't and then it's not consistent. We need some accountability from ourselves, our teachers, and the medical industry.
So as a mom of 4 kids who are in elementary and junior high right now, it's really important to me that they are getting good sources of information and that they are not, obviously, getting the bad or the negative. And part of that goes to making sure that, they are able to function as humans in society, that they are resilient. That is one of the things that is most important to me, is that resilient. When my kids are on YouTube, I can tell when they've been on YouTube, when they're just zoned in and they're not actually paying attention and they're not actually learning. I've spoken with teachers before who support the cell phone ban because those test scores go up, because their behavior is more manageable when they don't have that constant screen in front of their faces. I support restrictions in how we're giving our kids access to those technologies, especially if it's state funded and funded by the schools. I also want to make sure I'm clear, though, that I do believe that it's a parent decision and a local decision, not necessarily a state decision.
I think we need to have a strong culture shift, and it starts in the home. We need to support our children, have them interact with other children instead of interacting virtually, interact with adults. I don't think children are interacting with adults nearly as often as they used to. I think our kids also need to spend a whole lot more time outside. Just last year, my kids were playing in my front yard. Granted, we do live on a busier street in Kaysville, not busy, not Main Street. And a cop came and knocked on my door because my kids were playing outside and my neighbor got concerned. I was watching them the entire time. We live in a sheltered world, and I think that we need to let our kids be kids again. That's how we prevent this kind of thing to start. I am a full supporter of the bell-to-bell ban that Governor Cox is signed. I'm also a supporter of reevaluating our technology use at all in schools, because if there's evidence that, and it sounds like there is, that our children are better served by not having that in our schools, I think we really need to implement that. I do think that technology is a part of our modern life, so they do need to be taught at some point, but we need to follow what's best for our children.
It is known that bullying is practiced in the legislature. How would you handle this behavior that is meant to control your vote?
So my answer is my vote to any bill would be no, until I can be convinced that it follows the party platform. If it doesn't follow the party platform, you can bully me all you want. I don't owe anybody anything. I don't have any lobbyists. I don't have, I'm like Jen, you're my peeps, and I don't have any political connections. I've never held office before. I'm just a regular person that decided to try and make Utah great again.
So I've had some experience with this. A couple of years, actually, it was, a year and a half ago, a situation with a warming shelter came up in Davis County. And I was put in a room full of people, my fellow mayors, and a video was shown of me speaking about the warming center and how Kaysville wasn't the appropriate location for all of these really good reasons. And I was in this meeting, and that meeting, my city council meeting was replayed back in front of a room full of people. And I felt very bullied in that situation. But fortunately, as a kid, I was bullied a lot as well. I grew up as one of the only Asian kids in my community, and I think it made me strong, and it made me realize that you can stand up for yourself, and you can speak up for what you believe in. I was also brought into a state meeting, and the same thing happened. Again, I was bullied. I was around a table. There were lots of people that had called in on the call. We were talking about warming centers, whether or not Davis County had issues, et cetera. And I was speaking up for my community, and again, got bullied. And so I'm really good at standing up and being independent.
All right, next question. So there's a lot of concerns because there's going to be a lot of large data centers coming into the state, and they want to come into the state. But there's a lack of water and there's lack of power. What would you propose, because we want the income, but what would you propose to solve those two issues? Let's start with Tran.
Okay, so I'm not deep into this policy yet, I will admit. I understand that data centers are a profitable sort of venture. I think that we really, the water is very concerning to me. We've got great big issues. We've talked about the Great Salt Lake quite a bit over the last couple of years, and for a good reason, as well as the power and the pressure that it puts upon our grid. And so I really need to find out and investigate and learn a little bit more about that in order to be better educated. I would think that the communities that are fighting against data centers have good reasons for doing so. And as a legislator, one thing I will do is, you can't be an expert at everything, but you can be at some things. And so I will take the time to learn, and that's one thing that I'm really good at, and I will listen in and dig deep. So something that it's definitely on my radar to find out more about.
Yeah, it's the same for me. I'm not real deep in on that policy, like I said, I'm just a regular person, but it's hard to imagine wanting to bring those things in and complain about how much water we have at the same time and then talk about how good a data center would be. So there's definitely got to be some kind of balance struck and some kind of solution made. As far as power goes, I mean, nuclear power, but then again, that uses a lot of water too. So it's something that I'm not up to speed on, but I'm happy to learn and dig into it and find solutions with whoever we need to find solutions with.
I think we can revisit this question again when the next group comes up, because I know we've discussed this at length with them.
Can we take this one too?
Would you like to?
I would like to take this one. Okay, so I don't know everything about it, but I've been doing a lot of research. There's been NDAs signed. I'd like to know who signed those NDAs. I think that it's criminal to bring in data centers that use 6 to 9 million gallons of water a day, and then it evaporates, and it could lead to sludgy water that can't be used for anything else, and some of them are shoving it back into our waters, into our rivers. That's not okay. So how much of a tax incentive were they given? Who gave them that tax incentive? That information needs to be public. I just want to note that the legislature decided that you needed a made in China meter on your secondary water before they even asked the data centers how much water they were using. That's not okay. It's not okay. That information needs to be made public. Whoever made these deals needs to be made public. It needs to be given, that information needs to be given to people so that they can educate themselves and vote people out.
So we believe in being good stewards of our resources. That is critical because we want to make sure that our children have access to those resources after. And our legislature needs to be respectful of that, and we need transparency. So I completely agree that we need to make sure that everything that they are doing about this is transparent and 2, planned for. It's not like we don't know this is coming. It's not like we don't know that we're going to have water issues and electricity issues. Before we approve these things, we need to have planned out every step of it and who is going to be paying for that. And if it's the taxpayers, we need to be pushing back and saying, what is this value that it's bringing to Utah and that's serving our communities?
I am not an expert in this field. I do not practice water law as an attorney. I practice estate planning. That said, I am a firm believer in the free market and the philosophies of Milton Friedman and Thomas Sowell. I think that there's something wrong with the way our pricing is structured for our energy and for our water. If these large data centers are using a lot of water, they should have to pay for it. It should not be subsidized whatsoever. I don't believe in subsidies for anyone. So I'd like to see the government get out of it and them pay for the water that they use.
Unfounded mandates passed by the legislature are crushing communities and cities. How will you approach answering these when legislation is passed that will have an impact on cities and counties without a funding mechanism?
Is it us over here?
Yes.
You said unfunded mandates from the federal government? Is that what we're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Federal government?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Unfounded mandates passed by the legislature are crushing counties and cities. How will you approach answering that when legislation is passed that will or will not impact cities and counties without a funding mechanism?
So I believe in government as close as it can be to the people, the better. So when we're passing mandates down from a larger government to a smaller government that's not funded, I think there's something fundamentally wrong with that. We shouldn't be passing bills that way. So first it needs to start with our legislators reading the bills and making sure that there's a way to pay for it, but also not put restrictions on lower governments unnecessarily.
So I really do believe that unfunded mandates are more political gamesmanship. And what I have seen in my experience at the legislature is that oftentimes a legislator will push hard back on the city or the county or the institution and say, don't put a fiscal note on this, I need to pass it. And the pressures are real to pass it anyway, even though they recognize that it's unfunded. That's not the way this should work. When I look at a bill, I look at 3 things. I look at who is impacted, both for good and for bad, because there's always going to be more than one person and more than one entity that's impacted. I look at the fiscal piece of this, and it's not always just the fiscal note, because like I said, sometimes they play games with that. It's really what is the fiscal impact, and then 3, I look at how are we going to hold this bill accountable. There are so many bills that get passed, and it is for political showmanship. It's not for a real valid purpose, and it may not always do what it says it will be doing. We need to have those checks and balances in place to make sure we're passing good law.
Our legislators hate when the federal government tells them what to do, and then they turn around and tell cities and counties what to do. I will stand behind the cities in Senate District 7. I will talk to them. We will stand together and we will push back against unconstitutional mandates. We'll stand against funding that goes to NGOs that tear down the fabric of our society. It will be more transparent so the regular person can read it, understand it, know where the mandates are coming from, and then if there's a mandate that is refused, that they refuse to claw back, then we will look at businesses in the area that let's say that it's a park. I know they're not gonna force a park, but we have lots of amazing people in Davis County, as one of the most affluent counties in the state, that would love their name alongside of whatever that mandate is, that they can take in the social gain from saying, hey, that's what I donated to, so you guys didn't have to pay.
All right, so this is going to be the last question because we're out of time for this bunch, and then we're going to get the senators up here. So everybody's going to answer the same question. We're going to start with you and go this direction. So this is going to have 2 parts. It's one of our bigger questions. So right now the federal government is trying to pass the SAVE Act, and it's trying to mandate that you have an ID to vote and proof of U.S. citizenship. What is your belief on that? And what is your support on ICE? And let's start here.
So I believe the SAVE Act needs to be passed. I don't believe that people that are here illegally should be able to influence our elections and vote in our elections. I lived in Argentina for 2 years. I didn't get a vote in their election while I was there. I mean, it seems like common sense. Why should they get to vote in ours? The Senate needs to get their stuff together and get moving on that, break the filibuster and pass that thing. As far as ICE goes, I'm fully in support of ICE. I believe that people should come in the right way, and if they're not here the right way, they shouldn't be getting government benefits. They shouldn't be getting perks. They shouldn't be doing anything, getting anything for free. And come back in the right way and welcome to America, assimilate and become an American, not just a person from your country living in America, but become an American. And that's how I feel about that.
As far as immigration goes, my family is a benefactor of legalized immigration. My husband and I sponsored his family from Vietnam in 1991. At that time, we had to sign away any financial assistance from the government and prove that we could financially support them. We did this by working 2 or 3 jobs, and as soon as they got here to America, they were working. They, after a couple of years, were able to buy their first home, and then they pulled their money, and then they bought their second home, and then they pulled their money, and then they bought their third home. They're American citizens, and they are very, very successful. And so I definitely believe that legalized immigration is the right thing to do. It strengthens our country. We need to have a border. We need to believe in that. I believe that people who are here illegally committing crimes should be deported. Absolutely. Have no tolerance for that. The other part of the question, repeat it for me. Oh, the SAVE Act. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. The SAVE Act, absolutely support that. I can't even imagine why we're having a conversation about that, honestly. That is such a no-brainer to me. Why would you not have to prove citizenship? Why would you not have to prove ID to vote? It's ridiculous that we even are at the point in time that that is negotiable.
In short, I support the SAVE Act and I support ICE. The SAVE Act, I think, just makes sense, intuitive sense. I think other states in particular, I lived in Maryland, a very blue state, they do not hold their elections very well. And I think other states in particular really need to prove that the voter is actually a citizen. They need to have that requirement on them. As far as ICE goes, I fully support ICE's, their work right now. I think they're doing a great job. Their error rate is very, very low compared to other administrations as well. Fully support them. And I think if you're here illegally, especially if you're a criminal, you need to go. You shouldn't be here at all, depending on our resources in particular, depending on taxpayers' dollars. You shouldn't be here at all. So go home and try to come back the legal way. I believe in assimilation as well. I think if you're gonna move here and become a citizen, you need to actually assimilate, learn our language. You need to participate in society and actually be a contributor instead of a detractor.
The right to vote is so fundamental to our democracy, and we need to make sure that we're protecting it so that people who are not eligible to vote are not voting. We also need to make sure that people who are eligible to vote have the ability to vote. And so part of this is actually making sure that we need to step up our game to make sure that people who are eligible to vote have access to the documentation to make sure they can vote. Because I really hesitate to take away that kind of fundamental right, and at the same time want to make sure that we're not having people who shouldn't be voting in our elections. So part of this too is also my frugality and my deep desire to make sure we're using our taxpayer funds wisely. And so with anything that looks like this, I want to make sure that we're looking at the cost-benefit analysis and making sure that we're doing this economically.
So I think there's some data that has shown there's a very small portion of people that are voting in our elections that shouldn't be. I think Utah is different than California and probably Minnesota. So I think that the SAVE Act isn't necessarily for Utah, but I do think because we need national sovereignty, it does need to pass. As far as supporting ICE, the CBP-1 app, when Biden was president, was changed to accept any any name as part of an application for refugee status, and they tossed their IDs so that and the CBP One app did not require IDs. I talked to a gentleman that's a veteran, and he said there are people that we fought in Afghanistan, that we fought in other countries that have come across our border because they ID'd them by their eyeballs. So if people have come across and we don't have that data and we don't know who's here, then that's where we need to start, is who is here, what have they done. I think DACA kids need a little bit more support because they didn't have a choice, but I think there's a lot of people here that, that probably shouldn't be, and they need some assistance in getting home.
All right, we're calling it there. So we're going to have you guys switch your little mics with senators, and we'll have the senators come up.
That's
Representatives.
That's 2 nights in a row I didn't get a gun question. Feeling a little.
House reps. So yeah, just hand your mic to somebody else, and then they can pin it. Yeah, however you guys want to do, yeah. Did you get one, Mike?
Are we supposed to be in order? 14, 15, 16. Oh, this isn't mine. I don't think I need this.
You have to have one of each, because this one's going online.
Here, I want to sit next to you.
Yeah.
We don't have to have space. No, he said it's in order. Are we missing someone? Oh. So wait, which one is which?
This one's on.
Oh, so we do have to have one. Okay, so I'll be. Oh, you're quick. Okay. I'm on the end.
All right, so we got the House reps up here, and we're going to start going through questions. You can go ahead and go first.
So many good ones. Would you be in favor of any of the following options for helping seniors?
Can we do an opening statement?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Let's start with our introductions, and we'll start with John Taylor and move to the right. I'm so sorry.
Thank you for coming here. This is an important process. Elections matter. Your voice matters. This is literally why we have 250 years of the most successful experiment in the history of the world, and except for the city of Enoch. But this process of elections, the Founding Fathers gave voice to the people via elections. So doing this process is important. My name is John Taylor. I am running for House District 14. These guys are not my competitors, so it's nice. I have lived in Syracuse for 25 years, raised my 6 children there. I've been an Army intelligence officer. I've been a leader in my business, in my community, in my faith. I was recruited by Carrie Ann Lisenby to do this. I never intended to be a candidate. I am not an aspiring politician, but I am grateful to serve, and I do have the time and ability to stand up and present myself. And if I am chosen to do this in this capacity, I will work my butt off to learn the issues. I'm not going to be a perfect candidate, but we need your information and your input as to what is broken and how we can fix it. So I hope to do that, and I hope to earn your vote. Thank you.
My name is Lili Bitner, and I'm also running without either of my opponents. So he's in House 14, I'm House 17, and House 16. So we're the only ones repping our houses. And I'll just tell you a little bit about me, because this is my first time running for a House seat or a seat in the legislature. And I know some of you, and because I used to live in Layton, and now I live in, so I was in Trevor's area. In fact, I was the legislative chair when he became a representative. And now I'm in 17, which is Stuart Barlow's seat. And he is retiring, so I'm excited to run and hopefully fill his seat. I am the mother of 7 children. I grew up here in Layton and lived here for all my life. And then I met my husband at Layton High. And we got married, had 7 children. We traveled or moved across the country so that we could go to medical school. Is there a little ding?
No, our timer left, so I was watching.
Oh, okay. So, yes, or should I? Okay. I'll work in stuff later. Okay.
Hi, I'm Representative Trevor Lee. Welcome to House District 16, everyone. This is, in my opinion, the best district in the state. I'm also grateful for the Faith Baptist Church for letting us have this venue tonight. And like has been stated, none of our opponents are here today. And just so you all are aware, that speaks volumes about what we're doing. And if you want to know the issues and what's going on, the people who show up and want to be transparent, be accessible, is a very important thing if you want to be able to trust your legislator. So just remember that when you go out to vote. Also, need to speak really good things real quickly about John. He showed up at the Capitol for a lot of bills this last session to try to learn the process, and I'm very grateful for that, because not a lot of people are willing to go up to the committees and testify and get involved and try to learn the process. Lillian's been involved since day one. In fact, the first night I went to caucus in this new area over 4 years ago, Lili Bitner was the one showing me around, teaching me who all the important people were in the area, which a lot of you were there. And so I'm very grateful for that. So it's interesting that 2 of the people here running I have a very good relationship with, and I'm grateful that we're all here tonight. So thank you.
Okay. Would you be in favor of any of the following options for helping seniors? Freezing home valuations for property tax bills, eliminating state tax on Social Security, or eliminating state tax on 401ks RMD? Let's start with Trevor.
Okay, so it's interesting. Utah guys, we have a very different budgeting process, unlike any other state in the country. So we do one thing that is amazing, and that's we balance our budget because we have to. Our Constitution forces that. That's a good thing. However, our tax burden is the highest of any red state in the country. Okay? The reason for that is we spend way too much money still. Now, I'm on an appropriation committee. I handle higher education. That's what I am on the committee for. However, in our state, executive appropriations makes all of the decisions for the budget for what we do. In the end, I am a yes or a no vote on the entire budget. And I don't like that. I think it diminishes your voice and my ability to make change with line items in the budget that I may want to cut. Okay? And so I don't like that process with the state, and I would hope that we get more legislators in who are willing to make some changes so that we can have our voices heard with line items in the budget, so we can lower the spending, therefore decreasing the tax burden, also getting to something called no income tax. We can look at potentially getting rid of property tax like Florida's doing right now. Very hard, by the way. And we're also going to have to look at other things like Social Security, which I know many of you in here have asked, and I have had many of my constituents reach out, can you please take out the Social Security tax? Well, I would always vote for that in a heartbeat, but that's just not my decision. I'm a yes or no vote on the entire budget.
Well, Trevor, we're going to start with you, so you're going twice, but we're going to give you the opportunity, since there's no competition up here, to gloat a little bit. You just tried passing a bill that got kind of watered down that was going to eliminate benefits and any type of incentives to illegals. And that's what we need to do. We need to be helping ICE and not making it so they have to knock down doors by eliminating all the incentives. So let's talk about your bill. What went wrong, what went right, and then the other two can comment on what you would have done in similar fashion.
So, you know, it's interesting. The Trump administration has done, in my opinion, the best job in my lifetime of closing off the border. The flow has almost completely stopped. However, under the Biden administration, we had an influx of 10 to 20 million people. I mean, those numbers are insane. We're talking entire percentages of countries that came into our country illegally. In fact, were incentivized to come here by the Biden administration. So why are some of the reasons that people would, let's say, come to Utah? Because of the incentives and the benefits that we offer illegal immigrants. That essentially designates us a sanctuary state, okay? In fact, you're seeing the issue right now with the detention center down in Salt Lake City. You have a very liberal mayor, a very liberal city council fighting the federal administration with the ICE detention center. Well, that's a red flag to be a sanctuary city just in of itself. Because detention centers, if you look into them, are very, very, very important. You have one in the entire West in Las Vegas. Utah needs one. And so sheriffs, when they arrest people or our law enforcement, they have to let them go because there's no bed space to put the illegal immigrants, specifically the violent offenders. That is where the detention center is desperately needed. So I had a bill this last session that said, look, my family is struggling to make ends meet, like many of your families are struggling to make ends meet right now in Utah. Why on earth are we giving taxpayer-funded benefits to those who are not citizens? Our duty and our job as elected representatives is to put you, the taxpayers, first. That is what we should be doing, and our stewardship is for you, okay? If our job and the Constitution does not say that we need to give benefits to the entire world, especially at the expense of you who are working really hard and did not break the law to come here. And so my bill was very simple. It said, look, if you are not a citizen and you want to try to go get benefits, you need to just provide citizenship so you can have accessibility to those benefits. Unfortunately, the Democrat argument won out in the Senate on that issue. It said that it wasn't compassionate, it wasn't nice. But I'll tell you what, you know what's not compassionate is breaking laws, and then we have to pay for someone after they break those laws. That is not compassionate, that is wrong. It is our job to make sure that, especially in this government, that we protect citizens. That is our first and foremost responsibility, is we protect you. And especially when you're struggling to make ends meet and things are tight, to make sure that money is going to the places and the programs that it's supposed to. And so I'll say this is the last thing with this. There has been a huge issue, and this debate goes back 100+ years. This goes back to the founding of this country. When people need help, government should not be the place they go to get help. It should be charities. It should be churches. It should be your family. And the minute that we have taken that responsibility and given it to government is we have completely messed up the whole process. And we have entitlement spending that is bankrupting our entire country. $39 trillion in debt, that's a problem. So I propose a very minor bill to try to stop it, at least on the local level in Utah. And that just shows you where we're at even as a state, is you need to make sure that if that's something that you want your money prioritized, that you reach out to your representatives and tell them, I don't want my taxpayer money going to someone who's not a citizen.
I agree with many of the things that Trevor said. We definitely do not want our taxpayer money and our finite resources to go and be used for illegal immigrants and for people that have not come here for the right reasons and are here trying to use our resources inappropriately. I do think that there are ways that we can encourage legal immigration and ways that we can discourage there's ways that we can encourage legal immigration and ways that we can discourage illegal immigration. Did I say that right? One of the things, and I don't remember all the particulars because I didn't follow Trevor's bill all the way through, but I think there was one provision that was denying medical services to someone who came into an emergency room, and I could be wrong. And I think that was the one portion that may not have gotten it across the finish line. I think that we do not want toxic empathy. We cannot have empathy to the point of bankrupting us. We have finite dollars that are meant to be used for citizens, but I think that there maybe could be some tweaks on that bill if that was to be introduced again, so that we can make sure that we're not only preserving and protecting our finite resources, but we're also encouraging people to be legal in the way that they become citizens and using our taxpayer money for citizens. But we also need to remember that we are a Christian nation, and there's examples throughout the founding fathers that there are situations where if somebody's in an emergency need, if someone travels here from another country and they go to an emergency room, we do offer them services and health care. We don't just turn them away. So there's little nuances and little pieces that I think maybe could be tweaked, and maybe that'll happen next session.
Absolutely knows that part wasn't touched in my bill. Emergency services were not touched. If you went to the emergency room or if someone's life or safety was at risk, then you could still receive those services. That's a federal issue, and we can't touch that as a state.
I might have only heard part of that. I do believe strongly in this. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for legal immigration. My grandfather, my father was born in Germany and came here. They lived in a chicken coop for probably 15 years. It was a remodeled chicken coop, and that's how they were. And they worked carefully and meticulously to be able to get their citizenship. And I grew up listening to them praise the freedoms and opportunities that come from coming to this country and becoming a legal immigrant. I'm really grateful for the process, but I do think we need to preserve it. And like Trevor said, we need to make sure that our tax dollars are only used for our citizens, because that's what it's meant for, and that preserves our sovereignty. Your turn.
Everything they just said, well, those are my favorite things too. I don't know, that's a Nacho Libre. Yes, I spoke for Trevor Lee's bill. I did go and testify because I believed in it. And it's not because I don't have compassion. We are a compassionate state, and we have charity, and we donate. But, you know, one of the points I made is when you go to Yellowstone, they've got signs that say, "Don't feed the bears." And that's because bears become habituated, and they've quit learning, and they quit working hard, and it creates that dull mentality. I was recently in San Francisco, and downtown San Francisco, person by person, thousands and thousands of people openly shooting up drugs in the street. They give them clean needles, they give them a food subsidy, they give them a stipend for money, and they are creating dependency. And so when I look at illegal immigration, you know, there's a guy that was just arrested down in West Valley. He has been here for 27 years and not obtained his citizenship. And I know the pathway is a little bit cumbersome and hard, but you really, if you've got all the perks, if you can drive, if you've got all the benefits and everything, there is no incentive to become a citizen. And we want you and we welcome you to become a citizen. Come to America and become a citizen, but fully participate in this. I don't think politicians should be using your taxes as our charity. And so I believe in giving my money to these cities. I've spent tons of, I've gone to the food bank, I've loaded up my truck, I've organized food drives, and I've taken them to the food bank, and that was my money and my time. But I am not going to take your money and use it for my charity. And that goes across the board for many different items. So if we're going to be good stewards over our taxes, we need to, you know, do the hard thing and disallow this. So the legal immigration, I do have compassion. I speak fluent Spanish, and when I was a bishop, I worked with this community quite a bit. But I had to sometimes, in giving money, I had to pull back because they would take that money and they would go on a vacation and they would go to restaurants, and they were not supporting life. They were supporting their lifestyle. So we've got to get back to a period of austerity where we just have spent too much, and we need to take care of our citizens and then use our personal charity spirit to help them in other ways.
John, can we start with you on this one? Since the legislature has the power to moderate the school board, what will you do to stop the power the Davis County School Board from continuing to raise taxes when public outcry was so strong against the 37% increase they took this year?
Yeah, this is a real hot topic. The Davis School District, the school takes 63% of your taxes, your property taxes. And when I went to the tax commissioners and spoke out at the hearing, they wanted to raise from the general fund 30%. And I was the first person to stand up and say no. And I was sitting next to an older gentleman, from Farmington, almost 90 years old. He showed me his Social Security income and his tax bill, and it was incongruent. He was facing having to sell his home that he owned forever just because he could not afford it anymore. So a lot of this money does get sucked up into the school district, and we love education, it is important, but teachers, I am still contributing money and funds to end user teachers. And they don't have the money, so pay principals, pay teachers, but it is bloated at the top level. So we really need to address that top-down level. If we pass legislation, it will be directed to principals on down, and the top level do not get any extra funding from me. Sorry.
Okay, was the question what would we do about the taxes that have already been increased?
Well, what would you do to stop the power grab? How will you help moderate the school board from doing this?
I think, are we talking about top-down legislation from the state? I think that one of the most important things to recognize is that when we make legislation, we have to be very prudent and careful that in no way are we taking away the power from our local communities to make decisions. One of the problems with the school board, and I feel like this should be an obvious fix, is that we need partisan school board elections. I think that it's unfair to not know what values the people that you're voting in have when it comes to the way they're going to teach and instruct, the way that they're going to organize the school board, the values that they bring and the ideologies that they're going to bring. And nonpartisan school board elections just doesn't make any sense to me. I think that when it comes to the way we use our resources, there needs to be legislation that ensures that taxes are spent for actual instruction and for teachers. I feel like there's a lot of administrative bloat, and I think that there's a lot of administrative bloat, and across the nation and including in Utah, administrative numbers have gone up and enrollment has gone down, and that's not proportional since the spending has gone up along with the administrative bloat.
So enrollment in Utah is declining in our schools, but we still are increasing the amount of money we're giving to education every single year. In fact, over the last 10 years, we have seen a bigger amount of money go towards education than anything else. In fact, it's 6 to 8% increase per year on average for education. Now, this has done a couple things. Number one, we have the 12th highest paid teachers in the country now, so there's no argument against that. As already has been stated with the bloat at the top, that's a serious problem. I don't think you should have over 16 administrators in Davis County making over $200,000 a year plus benefits. That's ridiculous. But it's a holy grail. You can't touch it. It's like Social Security, guys. If you go out and you say, hey, like we actually need to cut some money from here, you're going to get crucified. And that's a problem. We need to be able to have hard conversations about this stuff. And I'm not saying that we need to cut teachers because we shouldn't. I'm not saying we should cut their spending, but we need to reform a lot of things about education. If your enrollment is going down, why do we keep giving increases to education? I think that's wrong.
We're going to continue. The person just brought me that question. We'll do that next. But we're going to continue this. So we had Richard Marcosi on from Utah Stories, which was another podcast. If anybody want to see his podcast. And we discussed this specific topic that you guys are discussing, that it's way bloated in the district level. The money that these legislatures putting towards schools is not getting to the classroom, where teachers are still having to spend a lot of their own money. My wife's a school teacher, I know this. A lot of their own money bringing in supplies. They're still asking parents to donate to the school for school supplies. A lot of our really, really good teachers are stop becoming teachers and go admin because they need the higher paychecks. There was a recent study done down the Granite School District, going along what Trevor just said, where they have well over 100 administrators making over $200,000 a year. So, and then what's going on in the Davis School District. So every single time the legislature puts money towards schools, it's not making it to the classroom. What can you do to ensure that the money goes to the teachers and to the students and is not sucked up in admin?
So you can earmark it. It's what we've had to do in the legislature. See, here's the problem too, guys, is we in the legislature have been very generous to the education community. We've done a lot of really good things to help try to make their lives easier. Because every time we give money to education, they just give it to the top. In the legislature, we've had to earmark that specific amount of funding so it goes directly to the teachers. We've also helped with the classroom supply issue. In fact, every teacher should be allowed a budget of about $500, I want to say, per year to help with supplies within the classroom if they need that. So there's plenty of money to go around. That's not really the issue here. What you really, if you want to look at some of the issues with education, is deterioration of the family unit. When I go talk to school teachers, they're going to tell you some of their biggest problems is not that they don't have enough money to teach, not that the administrators are making a fortune, it's that the kids are disruptive, they don't behave, and they have problems with a lot of the students. And so why would you want to teach if you have to deal with kids and you have no discipline and you have parents who aren't involved in their lives? That's the real problem. That's a societal issue that we have. That's a cultural problem. And so I would say that, you know, in the legislature, we're doing a good job with education, at least handling groups that are very hostile towards us. But if you want to change education and have things that are better, you need to change the culture and go back to a strong society where the family unit is the core of everything that we do. And that's why we need to really tackle social issues, because that's going to stem and help make everything better for everyone.
One of the critical things that I think needs to be addressed in the school system, and like Trevor said, that there isn't a money issue, there's plenty of money flowing, but even earmarked monies oftentimes get misappropriated and changed, and the wording is loose, and so it prevents the money from getting to where it's supposed to. I really appreciate the efforts of the Utah Fits All programs, but I think it's Arkansas that just instituted a universal school choice program, and their grades, the grades, the scores, everything up went significantly in 1 year. But the option, again, of being able to put more choice in the parents' hands, and that was money that was earmarked specifically for this Utah Choice program. But I feel like legislation, I feel like there should be more of those monies earmarked towards allowing parents to make choices that are best for their students and being able to individualize the kinds of options that would be best for each of their children. I know people who, for one child, public school is definitely best. For another child, some sort of blend of online and homeschool, or maybe even a private school, or these micro schools that bill passed, which is wonderful. All of these different options need to be available, but the monies have to be specifically allocated in that direction, because if they're not marked, then they do end up going to places where we don't want them to go and they were never intended to go in the first place.
School choice and free market really will help some of these things. And when we have more charter schools and they're doing better scores, people are going to start moving that way in the free market. But yeah, this is a problem. I talked to a constituent yesterday. She's a 5th grade elementary teacher, 37 students in her class. And it's not manageable, and they can't be taught, and it's just a big challenge. But here's the conundrum. You want to lower class sizes, you want to put them, but that's going to cost money. So if we are going to lower class sizes, there is no more money appropriated. The district level will have to figure out what they need to cut at the district level and put it down to the lower level. Now, my mom worked for the State Board of Education, and then she worked for Davis School District. She had 200 employees. She had a huge budget. And I said, Mom, at the end of every year, did you have extra money in the budget? Yes. And what was the feeling? What did you do with that budget? Spend to the end, use or lose. And that is the mentality. I would actually tie their merit increase to not spending, but returning back some more budget. So there are a lot of things that we need to do, earmarking and capping it, that it is intended down to principal and elementary school level and below, and then demanding the upper level bureaucracy shake out some of these things. Let's look at the return on cost benefits program. Let's look at return on investment and see if these upper programs can be thinned out.
Can I say something else, since I didn't use up all my time? Okay. Another thing that has been brought to my attention, which I find very interesting, because a lot of the class, I've been spending time volunteering in classrooms and shadowing teachers to find out really what is happening in the classrooms and what really is important to teachers. One of the things that I find has been a universal frustration for a lot of different school districts and a lot of different schools is that there is, and this was unbeknownst to me because I no longer have kids in elementary school, but there is a lot of state-funded preschool happening in our elementary schools. If you're not aware of it, there are classrooms that are so crowded, and down the hall are 3 or 4 full classrooms being set aside for full-time preschool for 3 to 4-year-olds. And that classroom space should not be being used for preschool. That's separate monies that should be used for that. Honestly, I don't think that there should be monies for that. I figured out preschool. I did it with my 3 to 4-year-olds. We did little neighborhood co-ops. If there's working mothers, there's plenty of people that I know that have worked that out and figured it out. They didn't need to turn over to the state a full-day preschool program at the elementary school. Why the classrooms are crowded like that. Anyway, this is a new universe we're entering in.
News to me too. Let's start with you on this one. Hill Air Force Base is the largest single-site employer of the state. What role do you think that the state legislature should play in supporting Hill?
Well, if you go to the roots of Layton, and the reason that we have so much commerce, the reason that Layton is because of all the industry and economy that was brought in by Hill Air Force Base. I think it's an integral part of our community, and frankly, Davis County as a whole benefits from having the presence of Hill Air Force Base. I feel like we need to support them, and we have a good relationship with them, and that relationship is important for our success, for our safety, and frankly, for the general economy of Davis County. I have more to say, but I'm sure that someone here with military experience might have a little bit more views.
Stand up if you're a veteran. Thank you for your service. I am an Army guy. I love the chair force. You guys are awesome. Yes, Hill Air Force Base is absolutely critical for us and for our economy. President Bill Clinton tried to take that away. He tried to diminish it. But as we bring in the F-35s and hopefully the F-47s, which are amazing, the ICBM programs, these programs galvanize us. We are actually in the best strategic spot to be in all for training, the testing grounds, everything. It is perfect what we have here. So we do need to protect it because when we have a liberal president that wants to diminish our economy and fight against it, we've got to insulate it. But I think bringing in these programs and establishing the community around it, because this is bread and butter of Davis County. So we do need to absolutely protect it. Obviously, we all support veterans. We're grateful for veterans, and I think everybody in the legislature will fight tooth and nail to protect Hill Air Force Base.
Yeah, I'll just ditto to both things that were said.
All right, so there's a bill that was passed. It's called, it's Bill Reform Act. So when you're getting bail as a criminal, they are now making it so you can place bail depending on your income bracket, which is releasing a lot of criminals out into the public that should not be out there. What is your opinion of moving that back to where it's real bail and is not depending on your income? Because now you got millionaires who are paying way too much and petty criminals are paying next to nothing, just getting released out onto the streets.
You know, it's interesting. I don't remember that bill. Was it last session? Okay, because yeah, I don't remember that bill. But we, you know, there's a phrase that's been coined many times with Utah. It's called suicidal empathy, and this is no different than, for example, not having mugshots, you know, being made public anymore. And you know, it's legislators with really good intentions trying to do good things, but inadvertently creating situations that are going to harm us or have unintended consequences. And this is one of those issues, right? I mean, most of the repeat offenders don't have a lot of money, but they're going to now just keep getting out and out and out. And when you have a DA like Sim Gill down in Salt Lake City, it gives him more fuel and ammo to let a lot of these off the hook, a lot of these criminals off the hook. So yeah, I'm definitely in favor of making sure we get that back up to a higher amount on the bail side.
If I'm next. I have a neighbor named Ted Ellison. He worked for the Sheriff's Department in Davis County for 35 years. Oh, there he is. And when I first, 34, okay. Wow, well, we deserve a hand for that as well. And one of the first discussions we had, he talked about the need for bail reform, and that he's a proponent. Like, you cannot have criminals, they don't get breaks because they happen to not make much. If you commit a crime, you commit a crime. The point of bail has a purpose, and to lower the bail or to adjust it for your income is just an absurd idea. I don't even know what more to say about that, but.
This is a tactic in blue states. You'll see blue states doing this catch and release, and then these criminals go and re-offend, kill, murder, all of these things are happening. And so this incremental degradation of let's catch and release and let them go free, that's, you know, the most important thing. If you had to define the greatest priority for the President of the United States, it is the security and safety of his citizens. That's why we had to shut the border. That's why we had to find all the illegal terrorists that have come in. That's why we have to be strict on laws. Mayor Rudy Giuliani, New York was just a thug city. He came in, he made it a police state, and it did clean up. So if you can remove drugs, you'll fix homelessness, you'll fix crime rates, you'll fix a lot of things. So there are things we can do if we will crack down and be stern, that we can deter a lot of the ills that come into society. When you're promoting, you know, legislation for marijuana and other things like that, you're hurting society, and all of the negative consequences follow. So we do need to be tough on criminals, and I would reverse this, and I would, you know, I would be stern on it.
John, let's start with you again. Do you support keeping biological boys or transitioning boys out of girls' sports, bathrooms, and locker rooms?
Boy, this is such a, I don't understand. We live in crazy times, biblical times, where right is being called wrong and wrong is being called right. And it's so much common sense. Everybody in this room is going to agree with this. Yet you have doctors, you have mental health counselors convincing your kid that went to a session because they were struggling with their mental health and affirmed that they should have gender mutilation performed. And they divorce them from their parents, and they destroy everything that the parents taught, all their values and everything. So we have serious threats to our kids, and anybody that's going to propose this kind of legislation and, you know, all these tricks to our kids, we have to be defenders of our children. So boys are boys, girls are girls. There have been millions of studies, empirical studies, medical studies, all throughout. Every single study has a demographic. Boys and girls. There's not one single study that shows, oh, a girl can become a boy or a boy can become a girl. Not one. So anybody that believes that is absolutely insane.
I feel like we're all going to have similar answers and similar things that we care about on this issue, but all of us know, without having to say anything, the logic of what John just said. One of the things I find interesting is when this issue first started becoming a more regular, everyday topic that even your 10-year-old knew about or your 5-year-old had heard about. I remember hearing someone who was detransitioning, and she was speaking at some sort of podcast, and she talked about the 2 triggers that made her think that she should possibly consider switching from a girl to a boy. And I've never forgotten this, because I thought, what a terrible thing that we can take such a vulnerable population and we can use such a simple manipulation to get kids who are the most impressionable to consider something so obscene and so ridiculous as mutilation. Anyway, the 2 things that she said that she considered was, she had been told, if you don't like the sound of your voice when you hear it on a recording, that's an indication that you're not comfortable in your own body. Now, I don't know about you, but I think there's none of us here that like the sound of our own voice. When I had my video made for my campaign, I first heard it, I'm like, I just can't listen to it anymore because I can't handle my voice. So anyway, by that metric, I'm not comfortable in my own body, like nobody is. And then the other metric she heard was, if you don't like seeing yourself naked in a mirror, you must not be comfortable in your... And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, maybe there's some of you out there just like to strut around in your mirror, but like most of us are like, I could fix that. But I think that that's one of those things where I just thought, what a manipulation, because all of us can identify how wrong and how evil and how perverse it is that we're in a world where we have to defend children from something that is so basic and so important, which is to understand the worth of themselves and who they are, and the importance of knowing that they have divine qualities, they have individual qualities that they should value and that they should be able to work to. I have my own 2 girls here, and we have this discussion a lot, that we need to be discussing your value and worth way beyond just your gender, and to make this into an argument or make this into something that we even have to defend is just ludicrous. But
you know, it's interesting. We have to keep fighting on this issue, guys. It's not over. In fact, to the state to the east of us, Colorado, if you're a parent and you don't want to affirm the transition of your child, they can take them away from you legally. Okay? California is the same way. So if you look at states on each side of us, you know, skip Nevada a little bit, the left is pushing further to the left on this issue, more progressive. States on the right, like Florida, Tennessee, Utah, like we're going more to the right on these issues. And so the fight is not over. This is why elections matter. This is why showing up matters. Also, just so you're aware, I had a bill this last session, HB 183. It was a very simple bill, but it was going to do a lot. And as we're changing laws like protecting female spaces from biological males, sports, bathrooms, etc., my bill was to go back through the entire state code, because since the compact passed in 2015, it inevitably created all the problems we've been dealing with the last 5 years. And what it was going to do was say, if you have the word gender anywhere in code, that does not exist. It is not a real thing. We need to go back to sex, male and female, because that's all there is. And it's not a gender transition, it's an attempted sex change. Okay? Words matter, and I couldn't get that past our Senate. So you think we've won this issue, we can't even get most of our legislators to vote for something as simple as making sure that words matter.
All right, so this is a great question that was just brought up to me, and I'm glad we're ending off with this, because I've discussed this multiple times in several of our podcasts. We started it off with Carrie-Ann Lisenby discussing this, but we have a runaway judiciary. They're legislating from the bench, and the main problem we have right now is once you guys create any bill, you have to consider, will this pass the court system? Because we have a bunch of judges legislating from the bench. And it's not only that they're legislating, but when they decide something, it should be a simple yes or no question. Is this constitutional, yes or no? If it is not, then they should be kicking it back up to the legislature to fix it. But what is happening right now is they're trying to fix it themselves within the courtrooms and legislating from the bench. Carrie-Ann Lisenby and a few others have proposed more of a report card type of reporting system that will be on the ballot. So, because the biggest problem we have is when we're confirming judges as an electorate, we have no idea who they are, how they've judged, what court rulings. Yet when we look up legislators, we know every vote you guys have ever done. We need a similar system where we can find out what judges are doing. So how do we fix that?
Yeah, we definitely tried to address it this last session. We've had so many of our court cases enjoined, which is a serious problem in the state. In fact, that's why abortion is technically legal in the state of Utah right now. You know that you can legally kill a baby in Utah because of judges. And they're saying the Constitution is the reason why that we should be allowed to do that. And so we've had some serious issues with judges, but I'm going to go back, because the real issue is we as Republicans pick our judges, guys. Our governors nominate the judges, and then our Senate confirms our judges. So if we have a problem with our judges, that's on us. That's on you guys making sure that you vet good senators who are going to go and make sure we have judges who uphold and follow the Constitution. So we created the mess we're in right now, and now we're scrambling trying to fix it when we have radical judges who are trying to go around and subvert the actual separation of powers. And so I think that's the real issue we have, because we're going to keep playing catch up the more and more we try to make more laws, whether we're expanding the court, which I don't agree with, or other types of maybe report cards, which that's a good idea. However, once again, we have activist judges because we as Republican legislators, governor, have put them on the Hill in the first place. That's an issue. So we need to make sure that we are talking to those who are in charge of vetting those judges, that they're going to follow the Constitution. There have been some serious red flags. If you go back and look at these committee hearings when they've appointed these judges and then confirmed them, and we still let them through. And so we're going to keep spinning our wheels on this issue if we don't do something better about that.
Yeah, I would second a lot of what Trevor said. I think that what is important here is that we're electing House representatives and senators who we know are going to try to hold the line, because that is the checks and balances, is that the legislature is supposed to be a check on the judges. And when we don't have the legislature doing its job, then that's how we get judges who make rulings that don't reflect our values or the things that we care about or the things that are important to us, or make lone judge rulings that all of us disagree with and that was not the intent of a particular proposition. I think that one of the things that's really important, and one of the things that's going to be important to me, once elected, I plan to make sure that as I create coalitions and work with my fellow representatives, that we find ways to work with the Senate and have cooperative relationships where we know and are aware of our powers to be able to create checks on the judges. I know that the report card idea sounds vaguely okay. I mean, I just don't know what the particulars are on that. The thing is that we already have one of those systems. There is websites where you can go to and see what judges, how they've ruled, which directions they've gone. They have report cards for whether they're more liberal or conservative. But again, you're relying on one particular website's interpretation of the report card. And so none of those report cards work as well, I think, as a legislature who's going to know very well these judges, their personalities, the way that they rule one way or the other. And anyway, there needs to be that continuous check. And your turn.
This is a Federalist 51 Papers issue, the separation of powers. And judges are chosen merit-based. But in today's society, they are so biased. Judge Gibson was biased. Her delay tactics and all of these things, choosing a gerrymandered map that looks absolutely ridiculous. So this is a challenge. But and if they're going to be biased and if they're going to legislate, then they need to be up for election, I guess. You know, if they're going to be, but that's not how it works. They get appointed, and yes, it starts with the governor and the senators. And we've got to have conservative governor and senators that will choose good judges. What can be done? Well, I did support the 3-judge commission for constitutional matters because of what happened. And so, and people say you're court shopping. The legislators court shopping. No, they're not, because they're independently selected. And so it's randomly selected. So that does resolve some of these constitutional matters, because when you have a judge that does not read the Constitution and votes against it and legislates from the bench, what good is your vote? What good is power to the people? You cannot vote out that judge. So this is a Federalist 51 issue, and this has been a historical battle. We've always tried to push and pull and realign what the legislator can do and what the judges can do. Legislatures legislate. Judges interpret the Constitution, and that's it. So yeah, this day and age, I support a report card, because, and when you're going to vote to retain the judge, just put no. If you don't know the judge, just put no on all of them. Be done with them. Let's move them out. Let's not let them camp there forever. Just move them out.
Yes? Okay, go ahead.
And maybe we should consider having the judges be partisan. Let us know at least what they are, what they stand for.
Yeah.
We would have an equal chance with Republicans and others, because they probably would consider their platform.
You'll never be able to get the partisan vote. The Constitution defines exactly how judges are chosen. It's always going to be merit-based. But a report card, type approach, I favor it. But there is constitutional principles that you have to maintain, so that's a challenge. That would be a challenge.
Yeah. But before you all leave, you might want to know just a couple of quick things I'm going to say. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, I thought that was a really awesome night, and I just want to make a comment on the Senate. This last legislative session, I sat in many committee meetings and listened to the things that were happening, testified on numerous bills. The Senate would not even pass out of committee a bill that says when you go to vote, you need to show your ID. They also passed out of committee a bill that allowed for DCFS to obtain a warrant from a judge without any criminal charge or proof. So there are huge problems with the Senate. We have got to get good people in there who are serious about being independent and not allowing bullying. Does that ever happen, Trevor? Bullying?
Never.
So I'm just going to also state everybody was invited tonight. In addition to the debates, we are interviewing all of the candidates that will interview with us. But there are numerous candidates that have not been willing to show up tonight and some who are not willing to interview with us. I'm going to name them. And we are the Davis County Conservatives. We represent constitutional government. That is what we want. We represent the values of the Republican Party. We actually work hand in hand with the Davis County Republican Party. However, those candidates that refused to come are named Sam Barlow, Adam Sorensen, Bob Stevenson, Stuart Adams, and Kara Toon. So I just, if Kara's listening, someone submitted a couple of questions for her. I'm just going to read them. Are you pro-choice or pro-life, and why do you support that position? And number 2, do you support the use of tax money to be used for illegal immigrants? So if you see Kara, those are 2 questions you might want to answer. Ask her, because it is a big deal. If a candidate is going to run for office, it is their responsibility to show up, especially where delegates are, so delegates can ask them questions. There were no competing events. Yeah, there's family events that happen, but they had plenty of time. So So I want 2 weeks from tonight, we're having another one of these events with county commission candidates. So that means all of Davis County should be here for that event. So thank you for coming. It's 8:22. Let's really try to be out of here by 8:35. Did you want to say something?
We're time's up here at the church, but again, I emphasized this last time when we did the sheriff's debate, and nothing against those of candidates who are collecting signatures, because that is the law right now, but we need to get rid of SB 54. It is corrupting the state. Again, like she was saying, the Senate is the problem, so you've really got to be careful of who you're voting for the Senate. The other issue we're having is there's a lot of delegates right now that are pro SB 54 and wanting to keep it as is. So you as state delegates, you need to talk amongst yourselves, find other state delegates, and make sure we are converting them over to getting rid of SB 54. The other issue we're having right now is with Prop 4, there's a mailer going out for everybody who has signed Prop 4 to try to get your signatures off. And so a lot of people, and text messages and emails.
It's over. They got them.
It's off the ballot.
Yeah.
Oh, did they win?
They won. LG hasn't reported, but the Salt Lake District came below threshold and is disqualified. And so Lieutenant Governor has not officially announced, but they've got it. It's off the ballot.
Well, we are going to have to try again.
We'll fight this again.
We'll fight it again. Anyway, watch the God and Country podcast. We do a lot of stuff on there. We do a ton of information that you guys really need to know. Because we are long format, we spend hours talking. So the podcasts are really long, but listen to 20, 30 minutes a day. But there's so much information we are able to pull out of people in that long format. You'll be surprised at what we can get. So look for the God and Country podcast on YouTube, and we appreciate everybody being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Ingrid and Uriah.